There's a word in Ratatouille that Pixar changed between the screenplay and the film. One word. And it completely unravels the movie's central myth. I'm gonna walk you through exactly what it means, and once you see it, you'll never watch this movie the same way again. But first, I need you to forget everything you think you know about Auguste Gusteau. Got it? Okay. The youngest chef to ever earn 5 stars. He's the culinary visionary whose broken heart killed him. The man who inspired a rat to believe that anyone can cook. Because Gusteau wasn't a genius, he was a fraud, and the proof has been hiding in plain sight for 17 years.
I was worried about the hair sample you gave me. I had to send them back to the lab.
Why?
Because the first time it came back identified as rodent hair.
Them, not it, them. The screenplay says it. The actual film says them. It's one syllable, and that one syllable blows the entire Gusteau mythology wide open. To understand why them versus it matters, we need to reconstruct exactly what happened with those DNA samples, step by step, because the movie buries this in a throwaway comedy beat, and most people never think twice about it. Here's the situation. Chef Skinner discovers a letter claiming that Linguini, the new garbage boy, is actually Gusteau's illegitimate son. If that's true, Linguini inherits the restaurant. Skinner loses everything, so Skinner's lawyer, Talon Labarthe, needs to run a paternity test to prove or disprove the claim. Simple enough, except for one problem. Gusteau's been dead for 2 years. You can't swab a dead man's cheek, so Talon needs to get Gusteau's DNA from something he left behind, something personal, something that would have touched his skin, his hair, or his body.
This is Gusteau's?
Yes.
May I?
Of course.
This is important. The toque is in a sealed display case. It's been preserved like a holy relic since Gusteau died. This isn't a hat sitting in a kitchen where rats run around. This is a museum piece behind glass in Skinner's private office. Talon keeps looking. So that's sample A, a hair from Gusteau's preserved toque, collected by the lawyer himself, chain of custody intact. Then Talon tells Skinner this.
I will need you to collect some DNA samples from the boy.
And that's sample B, hair from Linguini, collected by Skinner. 2 samples, 2 separate sources, both sent to the lab for comparison. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When Talon returns with the results, the screenplay says he had to send it back to the lab. But again, in the actual film, he says them.
I had to send them back to the lab.
Why?
Because the first time it came back identified as rodent hair.
It's plural. Both samples. Why would both samples need to go back? Let's just think this through. If only Linguini's sample came back contaminated with rat hair, what happens? The lab says, hey, this sample is weird, there's rodent DNA on it, we need a clean sample from the subject. You send back one sample. You don't send them back. But that's not what Talon says. He sent them back. Both of them, the whole batch. The only reason to send both samples back is if both samples had problems. If the entire test failed because something was wrong with the baseline comparison. Now, we know why Linguini's sample would have rat hair in it. Remy lives in his hat. The kid is literally walking around with a rodent on his head 24 hours a day. Of course his sample would be contaminated. That's expected. But what about Gusteau's sample? That hair came from a toque sealed in a glass display case for 2 years in Skinner's private office. Not the kitchen, not anywhere near the current rat infestation. So why would that sample also come back as rodent hair? I can already hear some of you. Come on, it's just sloppy dialogue. The actor flubbed a line. It became them. These things happen. But do they? In animation? Let me tell you exactly how Pixar works. Every line is recorded meticulously in a sound booth. Every take is reviewed. The dialogue is locked before animation begins because animators need to match mouth movements to specific syllables. If an actor says them instead of it, someone heard it. Someone compared it to the script, and someone decided to keep it. In live action, sure, actors improvise, editors miss things, but animation is the most controlled filmmaking environment on the planet. There are no accidents, only choices. Pixar chose them. But fine, let's say it was an accident. Let's say them is meaningless and I'm reading too much into a single pronoun. But then how do you explain the Sweetbreads? Midway through the film, Skinner tries to sabotage Linguini. He wants to humiliate the kid, expose him as a fraud, and prove that whatever talent Linguini has shown is just a fluke. So Skinner orders Linguini to cook a specific dish.
Tell them Chef Linguini has prepared something special for them. Something definitely off menu.
Not something from the current menu and not something safe. He digs up a recipe from Gusteau's later years, a forgotten favorite, and Colette reads the recipe card out loud.
Sweetbread à la Gusteau. Sweetbread cooked in a seaweed salt crust with cuttlefish tentacle, dog rose puree, gooey duck egg, dried white fungus, anchovy licorice sauce.
Now, let's stop right here. I need you to actually hear what she just said, because this isn't a complex dish, it's a crime scene. Sweetbreads are organ meat, specifically the thymus gland of a calf. When cooked properly, they're soft, creamy, and delicate. They're prized in French cuisine precisely because of that tender texture. You pair them with something that complements the richness. A crisp salad, a bright acid, something that balances it. And Gusteau chooses to pair them with cuttlefish tentacles. Cuttlefish are chewy, rubbery, and they require completely different cooking techniques than organ meat. You flash fry them or braise them for hours, there's no middle ground. And you definitely don't cook them in a salt crust, which is a technique designed to gently steam delicate proteins. So now you have creamy organ meat and rubbery seafood both cooked wrong for what they are. Your texture profile is a nightmare. You're chewing leather while mush dissolves on your tongue. But we haven't even gotten to the sauce yet. Anchovy licorice. I want to try to explain why this combination is so catastrophically wrong, because it's not just strange, it's the kind of mistake you make when you've lost the ability to taste. Anchovies are intense. We're talking concentrated umami, heavy salt, aggressive fishness. The flavor lingers, it coats your palate. It's the kind of ingredient you use sparingly because it dominates everything around it. Licorice contains a compound called glycyrrhizin. It's 30 to 50 times sweeter than table sugar, and it doesn't taste like candy sweet either. It tastes medicinal, kinda numbing. There's a reason licorice is so polarizing. It has a cloying, almost pharmaceutical quality that your brain codes as not food. And when you combine these two ingredients, you're creating a sort of chemical warfare. Your tongue receives two signals simultaneously: salty fish and medicinal candy. Your brain won't know how to process this. It's unexpected, it's challenging, it's incoherent, the culinary equivalent of hearing two radio stations at once. This isn't the cooking of an avant-garde genius pushing boundaries. This is the cooking of a man who has lost his sense of taste and is desperately throwing sophisticated ingredients together, hoping something sticks. And the movie knows all this. The movie explicitly tells us this recipe is a disaster. When Colette finishes reading the card, her reaction isn't curiosity, but disgust. This is Gusteau's most devoted follower, the woman who says she memorized every recipe he ever wrote. She reads this card and her first instinct seems to be revulsion. But it gets worse. The pantry chef Larousse backs her up.
Are you sure? That recipe was a disaster. Gusteau himself said so.
Gusteau himself admitted this dish was a failure. His own kitchen staff knows it. So here's the question we need to ask. Why does a 5-star chef, the youngest in history to achieve that rating, create something this fundamentally broken? Is it depression, burnout, the pressure of fame? Sure, those could make a chef uninspired. They could make him phone it in, serve something safe, perhaps, maybe even something boring, but they don't make you forget how flavor works. Depression definitely doesn't make you put licorice on sweetbreads. Burnout doesn't make you pair cuttlefish with Douglas fir. These aren't mistakes of a tired genius, they're the mistakes of someone who's cooking blind, someone who can see the ingredients but can't taste what they're doing. So you know what does cause that kind of collapse? Losing the thing that was doing the tasting for you. The Sweetbreads recipe is an autopsy report. It's forensic evidence of the moment Gusteau stopped being able to cook, and that moment coincides perfectly with what we'd expect if his talent was never his own. Now, we need to address the obvious problem with this theory. Rats don't live very long. A wild Norwegian rat lives maybe 1 to 2 years. A well-fed domestic rat might make it 3, maybe 4. That's the ceiling. Rats age fast and die young. But Gusteau's career lasted decades. The film shows us black and white television footage of Gusteau in his prime. His restaurant was a Paris institution. He wrote cookbooks. He became a brand. You don't build that kind of legacy in just 2 years. So if Gusteau had a rat helping him, how does the math work? One rat wouldn't explain a 20-year career. I'll admit that freely. If we're arguing that Gusteau had a single little chef who died and left him helpless, the timeline just falls apart. But who said anything about one rat? Think about Remy for a second. Remy's gift isn't learned, it's innate. From his very first scene, he can identify ingredients by smell alone. He can taste flavor combinations in his imagination. He experiences food as synesthesia, as music or lightning.
It's lightning-y!
His brother Emile doesn't have this, neither does his father. Remy tries to teach Emile to appreciate food and it goes nowhere.
You lost me again.
The gift isn't transferable, you either have it or you don't. Which means that the gift must be something genetic. Now, look at where Remy's colony lives at the start of the film, the attic of an old woman's farmhouse in the French countryside, a house that happens to contain a copy of Gusteau's cookbook. A house close enough to Paris that Remy ends up at Gusteau's restaurant within hours of leaving. Is that coincidence or proximity to something that mattered? Here's the theory that solves the timeline. Gusteau didn't have a rat. He had a lineage. Somewhere early in his career, Gusteau discovered a rat with the gift, the founder rat. They formed a partnership. Gusteau provided the hands, the height, and the human face. The rat provided the palate, the instincts, and the genius. And when that rat grew old, it trained its replacement, or simply bred offspring who inherited the gift, a succession of little chefs spanning decades, maintaining the 5-star standard, while Gusteau took the credit. The dynasty lived in or near Gusteau's operation for years, maybe in the walls or in the nearby colony, close enough to maintain the partnership, close enough to keep the magic alive, until something broke the chain. We know that Gusteau's decline was sudden. The film establishes that his restaurant was the best in Paris before it fell apart. Ego's review didn't come out of nowhere. Something changed. What if the last master rat died without an heir? Or if the colony was purged from the building, or some kind of disaster scattered them to the countryside, to the attic of an old woman with a cookbook and a shotgun? Without a rat, Gusteau enters his sweetbread phase, years of increasingly desperate cooking, throwing ingredients together, chasing the ghost of genius he no longer commands and never had. The food gets worse, the stars fall, and Gusteau dies. The broken heart wasn't about Ego's review. It was about losing partners who made him what he was. And then, years later, a young rat from the scattered colony finds his way to Paris. Remy isn't discovering something new, he's coming home. Surely if Gusteau had rats helping him for decades, someone would have noticed, right? You can't hide a partnership like that forever. Eventually, somebody sees something. And I think somebody did. And I think that somebody is Skinner. Watch how Skinner reacts to the possibility of rats in his kitchen. When Linguini first catches Remy, he's wrestling with the rat in his alley. Skinner sees them, and his first instinct isn't, there's a hygiene problem, it isn't, the garbage boy is crazy. His first instinct is, the rat is the cook. Stop and think about how insane that conclusion is. If you saw someone struggling with a rat in an alley, would your first thought be, that rat must be a culinary genius? Of course not. You'd think the rat was a pest and the person was trying to kill it or something. But Skinner leaps immediately to the truth. Instantly, without evidence, without explanation. Why? Skinner was Gusteau's sous chef for years. He worked alongside the genius every day. He watched Gusteau cook. He watched Gusteau succeed. And he watched him decline. And I think he might have seen some things. Maybe shadows in the toque that moved when they shouldn't, ingredients that shifted when no one was touching them, Gusteau's eyes tracking something that wasn't there, small inconsistencies, little moments that didn't add up. Skinner maybe couldn't prove anything. He probably thought he was going crazy, but somewhere in the back of his mind, he suspected. He knew something was wrong with the way Gusteau operated. And then years later, a garbage boy walks into his kitchen and suddenly produces 5-star dishes. A garbage boy who talks to his hat. A garbage boy who moves like he's being controlled by someone else. When Skinner sees Remy for the first time, he doesn't need time to figure it out. He already knows. That rat confirms decades of suspicion. And I think this theory reframes Skinner completely. The film presents him as a villain, a greedy little man who wants to exploit Gusteau's legacy and deny Linguini his inheritance. And sure, he's not really a good person, but he's also kinda not wrong. Skinner knows, or at least really believes, the genius was a fraud. He watched it happen. He saw the machinery behind the curtain, and now he's watching history repeat itself with Linguini. His obsession with catching the rat isn't villainy, but vindication. He's trying to prove what he's always believed. The tragedy of Skinner is that he's right about everything, but no one believes him. Alright, now let's talk about the motto, anyone can cook. It's the title of Gusteau's cookbook, the philosophy that inspired Remy, the central theme of the entire movie. We're told it means something democratic, something hopeful, that talent can come from anywhere, that greatness isn't determined by birth or privilege. Ego says it directly in his final review.
Not everyone can become a great artist, but a great artist can come from anywhere.
It's a beautiful sentiment, an inspiring message, and I think it's a complete misread of what Gusteau actually meant. If Gusteau was being controlled by a rat, anyone can cook isn't a philosophy, but a confession. Think about it from Gusteau's perspective. Assuming this theory is true, he knows he's a fraud. He knows the genius isn't his. Every night he puts on the toque and becomes a vessel for something else's talent. He's not cooking, he's being piloted. So when he writes a cookbook called Anyone Can Cook, he's being literal. Anyone can cook. Even someone with no talent. Even someone who can't taste. A mediocre chef who got lucky enough to find a rat with a gift. The vessel doesn't matter. The human is just the hands. What matters is the tiny chef pulling the strings. And Gusteau was confessing his method. And then there's the ghost. Throughout the film, Remy talks to an imaginary Gusteau, a projection of his idol. The movie is explicit that this isn't supernatural. It's Remy's subconscious manifesting as the chef he admires.
What can I do? I am a figment of your imagination.
The ghost of Gusteau is warm, kind, and encouraging. He believes in Remy. He pushes Remy forward. He represents everything Remy thinks Gusteau stood for. But again, assuming the theory is true, we know the real Gusteau now. We know that the real Gusteau was a man who couldn't cook without help, a man whose final recipes were kitchen disasters, and a man who did not die from heartbreak over a review, but the despair of losing the partners who made him special. Remy, of course, isn't talking to Gusteau's spirit, he's talking to an idealized version that never existed. He's in love with a lie. But here's the thing, maybe that's okay. Maybe it doesn't matter that Gusteau was a fraud. Maybe the lie served its purpose. It inspired a rat to believe in himself, and it pushed Remy to do things no rat had ever done publicly. It created something beautiful, even if the foundation was rotten. Ego's review gets it half right. A great artist can come from anywhere. The part he misses is that Gusteau wasn't the great artist. The rats were. They always were. Gusteau just had the good sense to let them cook. And thank you so much for watching. And click here where I prove that Batman's victory speech at the end of The Dark Knight is also a lie.